My name is Tessa Whitman, and I am 28 years old, and I want to tell you about a routine financial review I did on a Sunday afternoon in March that revealed $41,000 had disappeared from a joint savings account I shared with my parents, money my brother Marcus had withdrawn over 14 months for a gambling problem my parents had known about for 8 of those 14 months and had never told me anything about. I need to explain the account before I explain what I found in it. My parents had opened a joint savings account for me when I was 19, a relatively common arrangement in our family that they had also done for Marcus 2 years before me when he turned 18. The accounts were meant for emergencies and shared family expenses, the kind of safety net structure that allows a young adult to have backup resources while still maintaining some family oversight. I had used the account rarely in the 9 years since it was opened, mostly to receive birthday and holiday contributions from my parents, and occasionally to cover something significant, like a security deposit or a car repair. I had not checked the account closely in over a year. I am generally a careful person about my finances, but the joint account had become one of those things that exists in the background of your financial life without requiring active attention because you trust the people who have access to it. I pulled a full year of statements on a Sunday afternoon in March as part of an annual financial review I do every spring, the kind of disciplined personal practice that has served me well across my adult life. I expected to see the modest, predictable activity I had seen in previous years. What I saw instead was a series of withdrawals beginning 14 months earlier, escalating in frequency and amount, totaling just over $41,000. I sat with the statement for a long time. Then I called the bank to confirm I was reading it correctly. I was. I called my mother. I asked her, as calmly as I could manage, whether she knew anything about withdrawals from the joint account totaling $41,000 over the previous 14 months. The silence on the other end of the phone told me everything before she said a single word. My mother's voice, when she finally spoke, had the specific quality of someone who has been dreading a conversation for a long time and has just discovered it has arrived. She said, "Tessa, I need you to understand something before I explain." I said, "Explain it now, and I will decide what I understand afterward." She told me about Marcus. My brother was 31, 4 years older than me, and had developed a gambling problem that had started, according to what my mother told me, with sports betting apps about 2 years earlier and had escalated into something more serious over the following year. He had started using the joint account 14 months ago, small withdrawals at first, then larger ones, covering losses that compounded the way gambling losses compound when someone is trying to win back what they have already lost. My parents had discovered what he was doing 8 months into the 14-month period when the withdrawal pattern had become impossible to overlook during their own routine review of the account. They had confronted Marcus. He had admitted everything. They had decided, as a family unit that apparently did not include me in the decision-making process, to handle the situation privately. They had helped him enter an outpatient treatment program. They had been managing the financial fallout quietly, absorbing what they could, and allowing the remaining withdrawals to continue because, as my mother explained it, stopping his access to the account abruptly during early treatment had been advised against by the counselor they were working with as potentially destabilizing. I asked the question that mattered most. I asked why nobody had told me that my savings, money that I believed was protected in a joint account I rarely touched, had been disappearing for 14 months. My mother said they had been trying to protect me from the stress of it while Marcus was in early recovery. She said they had intended to tell me eventually, once things were more stable. She said they had been planning to make it right. I asked what making it right looked like. She said they were working on a plan. I said, "Mom, you let my brother take $41,000 from an account with my name on it, and you knew for 8 months and you did not tell me?" I said, there is no version of protecting me that involves not telling me my money is gone. She did not have a response to that because there was not a good response available. I spent the following 2 weeks gathering information rather than reacting. I am a person who processes significant situations by understanding them completely before deciding how to respond, and this situation required complete understanding before any decision I made would be the right one. I obtained the full account history directly from the bank, which confirmed the timeline my mother had given me and provided additional detail about the specific withdrawal pattern. I confirmed with the bank what my legal position was as a joint account holder, which an attorney friend explained to me over coffee was complicated in the specific way joint accounts are complicated. All parties technically have equal access and equal liability and equal claim, which meant that pursuing the money back from Marcus directly would be legally possible, but practically difficult given that he likely did not have the funds to repay it, and given the family complications that pursuing it formally would create. I talked to Marcus directly, once, in a conversation he initiated after my mother told him I knew. He was in his second month of the outpatient program. He sounded different from how I remembered him sounding, more deliberate, more careful, the specific quality of someone who is doing real work on something difficult. He apologized. He said he understood if I never forgave him. He said he was trying to find a way to pay back what he could, though he was honest that it would take years given his current financial position. I told him I appreciated the honesty and that I needed time before I could fully process what I felt about the situation. He said he understood. The conversation was not warm, but it was honest, and honest was more than I had gotten from my parents in the 8 months they had known and said nothing. I want to be clear that I do not think Marcus's gambling problem makes him a villain in the simple sense. Addiction is a real and devastating thing, and the fact that he had entered treatment was a genuinely positive development. My anger, and I want to be precise about where it was directed, was not primarily at Marcus. It was at my parents, who had made a decision that affected my finances and my trust without including me in that decision at any point across 8 months. 3 weeks after I discovered the statement, while I was still in the middle of processing all of this and deciding what my response was going to be, my mother called again. This time it was not about Marcus directly. She said they had an unexpected expense, a roof repair that insurance was not fully covering, and she asked if I could lend them $8,000 to bridge the gap until they could sort out the rest. I sat with the phone in my hand for a moment after she asked, processing the specific quality of the request, which was that my parents, who had allowed $41,000 of my joint account money to be spent without telling me for 8 months, were now asking me directly for an additional $8,000 as if the previous situation either did not exist or was not relevant to this new request. I said, "Mom, I need a minute before I answer that." She said, "Of course, take your time. We understand it is a big ask." I ended the call. I sat at my kitchen table for the rest of that evening, organizing what I actually thought and felt rather than reacting in the moment, because reacting in the moment was not going to produce the response I actually wanted to give. What I had been building in the 3 weeks between discovering the statement and receiving this phone call was not a plan for confrontation. It was a plan for boundaries. I had spent those 3 weeks consulting with a financial advisor about closing the joint account and establishing my own independent accounts entirely separate from my family structure. I had spent time with the attorney friend, understanding my actual legal options regarding the missing $41,000. And I had spent time, the most difficult time, sitting with what I actually believed about my relationship with my parents going forward. I called my mother back the following day. I had organized exactly what I wanted to say. I said, "Mom, I am not going to lend you $8,000. She started to respond, and I asked her to let me finish. I said, I am not saying no because I do not love you or because I'm trying to punish you. I am saying no because you allowed $41,000 of money in a joint account with my name on it to be spent without telling me for 8 months and asking me for an additional $8,000 3 weeks after I discovered that without acknowledging the first situation at all tells me that you do not fully understand the position you put me in. She was quiet. I said, I need you to understand something else. I said, I am closing the joint account. I am opening my own independent accounts. I am not doing this as a punishment. I am doing it because I have learned that I cannot trust a shared financial structure with this family right now. And that is a direct consequence of decisions you made, not decisions I am making out of anger. She said, Tessa, we are still your parents. I said, I know that. I said, this is not about whether you are my parents. It is about whether I can trust a joint account with people who decided, without consulting me, that protecting me meant not telling me my money was gone. The conversation that followed lasted over an hour. My mother cried at several points. My father, who had been quiet through most of the call, eventually got on the line and said something I had not expected, which was a direct and uncomplicated apology that did not include qualifications or justifications about Marcus's treatment timeline or protecting me from stress. He said, we made the wrong call. He said, we should have told you the moment we found out, not 8 months later, and definitely not from a statement you found yourself during a routine review. He said, I understand if this changes how you trust us with anything financial going forward. I appreciated that apology more than I had expected to, because it was the first one that did not come wrapped in an explanation that minimized what had actually happened. The account closed 3 weeks later. The process was straightforward, a joint account dissolution that returned the remaining balance, which was modest after everything that had been withdrawn, split according to the bank's standard procedure for joint accounts being closed by one party. I did not lend my parents the $8,000. They found another way to cover the roof repair, which I learned about later through a brief update from my mother that did not ask me to reconsider, and that I appreciated for not asking. Marcus has continued in treatment. He reaches out periodically, brief texts checking in, nothing demanding or expecting anything specific from me. He sent me a message on the 6-month anniversary of starting the program that simply said he was grateful for the time and space I had given him, and that he understood it would take longer than that to rebuild trust, with me and with himself. I have started rebuilding a relationship with my parents that is more honest than what existed before, partly because the boundary I set forced a level of honesty that had not previously been required. We talk regularly. The conversations are different now, more direct, less organized around the family habit of managing difficult information by deciding what other people need to know about their resources. I am protected now in the way that actually matters, which is full information and full control over what is mine. My parents understand, finally, that protection without information is not protection. It's just a different kind of taking. I have my own accounts now. Nobody else has access to them, not out of distrust in a permanent sense, but out of the specific clarity that comes from learning at 28 exactly what happens when you assume a joint structure built in your teenage years is still serving you the way it was designed to when you were 19 and trusted everyone completely. That trust was not wrong to have at 19. It was wrong to maintain unexamined at 28. I have examined everything now. I am not going back to the version of myself who did not check. That is the story. Drop your city in the comments, hit subscribe. I will see you in the next one.